Hi, welcome to Forward Community Church Children's Ministries. We're back again today for another Bible story. We're still in the time of the Judges in the Bible, not the book of the Judges anymore. It was this time period that was kind of weird between when they took the land and before they had a king, where there wasn't really a ruler. They just kind of did what they wanted. They worked together as tribes when they needed to. During this time, there was a man named Elkanah, and he had a wife named Hannah. They were a good couple. They served God, but they had a thing where they had no child, and they really wanted one. Year after year, they kept praying for it, and it didn't happen. At this time, there was no temple yet. They still had the tabernacle that they built as they were coming out of Egypt. This tabernacle was set up in a certain spot, and they would go worship and offer sacrifices there. Well, Hannah, every year, would go to the tabernacle and would offer a sacrifice. And one year she's there offering, and she's praying really hard for a child. And she looks like really distressed. She's sad. She's crying out to God. And she's praying, and her lips are moving, but there's no voice coming out. And she prayed, God, if you will give me a child of my own, if you'll give me a son, I will give that child back to you. The high priest happens to come by, whose name is Eli, and he sees her there, and he sees her lips moving and making no sound, and he thinks that she must be drunk. So he kind of rebukes her, and he says, you shouldn't be drunk this early in the day. That's not good. You need to repent of your sin. She told Eli, no, I'm not drunk. I'm praying for a child. I really want a child, and God hasn't given me one. So Eli looked at her, and he said, you know what? God is going to give you what you ask for. And Eli looked at her and he said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked of him. And God heard her cry. He gave her a child. And when she gave birth to him, she named him Samuel, which means heard of God, or God heard me. After this, remember, she promised that she would give this child to God. She stopped going to the temple for a little while. She raised the child until he could live on his own, till he didn't need her anymore. She took him to the temple and she brought him to Eli and says, look, God gave me this child like I asked for, and I promised that I would give him back to God's service. She pledged that Samuel would serve God all his life, and even though he was young, he began learning how to serve and take care of God's temple and was a good servant to Eli. Every year his mother would visit him and would make him a new robe because he was getting bigger and he needed new clothes every year, so she'd bring him a new one. And God blessed her. He gave her 3 more sons and 2 daughters. Samuel isn't Eli's only servant in the temple. Eli also has 2 sons. These sons help him in priestly stuff, but they're not good men. They're wicked men. Eli, as the father and the head priest, should have removed his sons from office. He shouldn't have let them be workers, but he didn't do it. One night, while Samuel is still a boy, Samuel's sleeping, and he hears a voice calling him, Samuel, Samuel. And so he wakes up and he thinks Eli's calling him. So he jumps up and he runs into Eli's room and he says, here I am, Eli, what do you need? Eli wakes up, he's tired, and he's like, oh, I didn't call you. I don't need anything. Go back to bed, Samuel. Samuel goes back to bed. A little bit later, Samuel, Samuel. And he jumps up again, runs into Eli and says, I heard you. I'm here. What do you need? Eli says, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. Well, this happens a 3rd time. And this time, it finally sinks into Eli's head. Samuel, I'm not calling you. It's God calling you. Next time God calls you, you need to say, speak, Lord, for your servant listens. And listen to what he says and do whatever it is. Samuel goes back to bed again, and he's laying there, and God calls out again and says, Samuel, Samuel. This time Samuel sits up and says, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. God shared something with Samuel. The next morning, whenever Eli woke up, Samuel shared it all. God's message was, because Eli didn't remove his sons, were doing wicked things in the temple and making God's name bad, God was going to destroy all of Eli's family. A little time goes past, and the Philistines come up to attack the Israelites again. As the Israelites went out to battle, they took the Ark of the Covenant of God with the 2 priests, Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's sons. They had them with them, the idea being that God's presence would be with the army and that they could defeat their enemies. They had been doing evil, and God's presence was not with them. God allowed the Israelites to be conquered by the Philistines. They beat them in the battle, and they killed Eli's 2 sons and took the Ark of God. They took it back to the Philistine city. Whenever word came back to Eli that his sons had been killed and the Ark of God had been taken, he was so distressed that it's kind of like he fainted. He had a stroke and he fell backwards off the bench that he was sitting on, landed on his head and broke his neck, and he died that day. Just like God had said, God had judged his family because they'd been doing evil, and he had killed his sons, and he'd killed Eli in the same day. The ark was very important to the Israelites. It was kind of the focus of God's presence. They kept it in the tabernacle. It was a very sacred thing, a very holy thing. For the enemies of Israel to have it was a big deal. The Philistines were really excited. They beat the enemy. They took the ark in and they set it in their temple, the temple of Dagon, one of their gods. After that night, they woke up in the morning and they went into the temple, and their statue of their god that had been next to the Ark of the Covenant was on its face in front of the ark. It'd fallen over, and they're like, huh, that's weird. They picked it back up and they put it back where it went. The next night, they come back in the morning, the statue has fallen down again, and this time, instead of just falling down, it broke into pieces. God was demonstrating that his power is greater than these false gods. At the same time, sickness starts to break out amongst the Philistines. They start getting sick, and many of them start dying. And they start wondering, have we messed up? Are we not supposed to have this ark? Is this what's causing our trouble? Because this is what changed. So they decided to do a little test and see if this is it. They took 2 cows that had calves, and they took their calves away. Now, if you've ever been around cows when they wean them, cows will do everything they can do to get back together with their babies. They'll jump over fences, they'll break through things. You have to have really good fence, and they do everything they can to get with their babies again. So they hooked these 2 cows up to a wagon. And they said, okay, if these cows go back to their babies, we will know that it wasn't this ark, it wasn't the Israelites' God, it was just bad luck. These cows go straight back to the Israelites. We will know that this was not supposed to be here, that this was their God, and they can have it back. Well, the cows just went straight down the road, went right up to Israel, and went right out in a field in Israel. It was apparent to everyone God was punishing the Philistines, and he wanted to be back in the land of Israel with this ark. Sometime later, Samuel is a grown man now. He is the last judge of the Israelite nation, the last good judge. After this comes the time of the king. But he spoke to the people and he said, if you return to the Lord with all your heart, he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. God did protect the people from the Philistines during Samuel's reign, but they were not able to conquer the Israelites like they did before. Next week we'll be talking about the very first king of Israel and how all that came to pass. We'll be talking about Saul. So check back in with us then. Have a great day, and God bless.